For more than a decade, Carol Burnett made millions laugh with her iconic variety show. But behind the scenes, there was one man who pushed her patience, tested her limits, and according to those who worked closest to her became the only person she ever truly hated in Hollywood. Fans know Carol as warm, gracious, and endlessly patient, a woman who forgave mistakes, encouraged young talent, and treated her cast like family. So the idea that she could hate anyone sounds almost unbelievable. But this story isn't rumor. It's real, and it shook the entire production of The Carol Burnett Show. The tension didn't start with a single argument. It began slowly: small frustrations, private complaints, and a growing sense that this one man was crossing lines that even Carol's legendary kindness couldn't excuse. Crew members whispered about it. Writers tried to keep the peace. Even the audience sensed the icy chemistry. And as the seasons went on, things only got worse. Some say he was disrespectful. Others say he tried to upstage her. A few insist he nearly sabotaged the entire show. Whatever the truth, Carol reached a point she rarely reached with anyone. She stopped pretending. She demanded he be removed. She refused to rehearse with him. And in one shocking moment that insiders still talk about to this day, Carol Burnett finally unleashed years of bottled frustration. Carol Burnett, a woman whose name is synonymous with laughter, charm, and grace, has long been celebrated as one of television's most beloved figures. For years, audiences adored her warmth, her ability to turn a sketch into a timeless moment, and her generosity toward cast, crew, and friends alike. Yet, behind the laughter and the applause, a story brewed, one that would test the limits of Carol Burnett's legendary patience. It began during the early seasons of The Carol Burnett Show, a time when the production was finding its rhythm. The cast was tight-knit, the crew dedicated, and Carol, ever the consummate professional, worked tirelessly to make everyone shine. She fostered an environment of collaboration, encouragement, and creativity. But even in this seemingly perfect ecosystem, not everyone shared her vision or her respect. According to insiders, the tension started subtly. A man joined the production, someone who had talent, ambition, and a flair for attention, but who also had a knack for pushing boundaries. Initially, Carol tolerated minor disagreements and occasional lapses in professionalism. She believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt. After all, she had mentored countless young actors, guiding them through the intricacies of live television. But over time, small annoyances turned into recurring issues. Reports suggest that this individual frequently attempted to upstage others during sketches, disregarded stage directions, and at times, disrespected colleagues behind the cameras. While most performers might have shrugged it off, Carol's eyes and ears were everywhere. She noticed every misstep, every subtle act of defiance, and every attempt to undermine the harmony she had worked so hard to cultivate. For Carol, television was a delicate balance. Comedy, timing, and camaraderie were everything. When that balance was threatened, she could not, and would not, ignore it. The cast and crew began whispering about the growing friction. Meetings became tense. Rehearsals were fraught with unspoken frustration. Even veteran writers, who had long admired Carol's patience and composure, could sense a shift. There was an unspoken line that had been crossed, a point where her legendary kindness collided with undeniable irritation. By the time the third season rolled around, Carol's tolerance had worn thin. She still remained professional on camera, delivering sketches with her trademark brilliance. But off camera, she began strategizing. Every move this man made was noted, every disruption catalogued. She was a master of observation, and now her focus was singular. She would not allow this person to compromise her show or the people she cared about. It was a turning point, a moment when admiration and mentorship transformed into frustration and resolve. What followed would be the story insiders still recount in hushed tones: the rise of tension between Carol Burnett and the one man she couldn't stand. By the fourth season of The Carol Burnett Show, the tension between Carol Burnett and this one man had escalated to levels that no one on set could ignore. What began as small irritations, disrespectful gestures, subtle attempts to dominate sketches, offhanded remarks had grown into a pattern that threatened the harmony of the entire production. Carol, known for her patience and generosity, had reached a point where she could no longer maintain the facade of calm professionalism. Sources close to the production describe a simmering environment. Writers who once collaborated freely now found themselves tiptoeing around certain sketches, adjusting jokes to avoid confrontations. Fellow cast members whispered backstage about the increasing friction, unsure how to intervene. Even production assistants noticed the change. The energy that once defined the show's rehearsal rooms was now laced with tension. Carol's reaction, however, was precise. She never allowed the conflict to bleed into her on-camera performance. The laughter, the timing, the flawless delivery, these remained untouched. But behind the scenes, she was strategic. Every misstep by this man was noted and remembered. Friends recall her quietly consulting with trusted colleagues, weighing every decision, how to protect the integrity of the show while maintaining professionalism, and ultimately, how to set boundaries that could not be crossed. The man's behavior became increasingly audacious. Reports suggest that during rehearsals, he deliberately ignored cues, attempted to overshadow fellow actors, and even undermine sketches that required collaboration. What made this behavior especially infuriating for Carol was its blatant disregard for the respect she had cultivated on set. She prided herself on fairness, kindness, and mentorship, but here was someone actively testing the limits of her patience. Insiders reveal that, for the first time in her career, Carol began documenting interactions. She made mental notes of incidents, patterns, and disruptions, treating the situation with the same careful attention she gave her most complex sketches. The difference, however, was emotional. Where rehearsal notes were mechanical, this documentation carried the weight of personal frustration, disappointment, and growing resentment. By the mid-season finale, tension reached a breaking point. An incident during a live rehearsal reportedly sparked one of Carol's rare moments of verbal confrontation. Witnesses say she finally confronted the man directly, in private, making it clear that his behavior would not be tolerated. This was no casual admonishment, it was a decisive, boundary-setting moment. Carol Burnett, the woman known for laughter and levity, had revealed her true feelings. It was a turning point not just for the man in question, but for the show itself. The crew understood. Carol's patience, her grace, and her legendary professionalism had limits, and anyone who threatened the harmony of her team risked igniting the one side of Carol Burnett the world rarely, if ever, saw. By the end of Part 2, it's clear that what viewers watched on screen, laughter, sketches, and impeccable timing, was only one half of the story. Behind the scenes, the conflict had reached its peak, setting the stage for the dramatic resolution that would cement this man as the one Carol Burnett truly hated. Above all others, the simmering tension that had been building for seasons finally reached a boiling point. Carol Burnett, a woman celebrated for her kindness and legendary patience, had now entered uncharted territory. For the first time in her career, she was forced to confront someone who challenged not just her authority, but the very foundation of the show she had nurtured for years. The man's behavior continued escalating. On one particularly tense day, he attempted to dominate a sketch during rehearsal, ignoring cues, speaking over other actors, and even mocking directions from the writers. Insiders recall Carol standing silently at first, observing, with her trademark calm. But behind her composed demeanor, a storm was brewing. Those closest to her could sense that the patience she had long relied upon was nearing its limit. Finally, the breaking point came. In a private meeting, Carol confronted him with the full weight of her frustration. She did not mince words. She outlined the impact of his actions not just on her, but on the cast, crew, and the integrity of the show. Witnesses described the moment as electric, a combination of calm authority and undeniable fire. For the first time, Carol's fury was visible, unmistakable, and impossible to ignore. The confrontation had immediate effects. The man attempted to defend himself, citing misunderstandings and creative differences. But Carol was unwavering. She made it clear that continued behavior like this would not be tolerated under any circumstances. The meeting ended decisively, with the man realizing he could no longer operate with impunity on her set. Behind the scenes, the tension lingered for weeks. The cast and crew watched closely, aware that the balance of power had shifted. Carol's actions sent a clear message: respect, loyalty, and professionalism were non-negotiable. She had drawn a line that no one could cross. At the same time, Carol began to reflect on how rare it was for her to feel such intense dislike towards someone in her professional life. She had always believed in mentoring, in giving second chances, and in forgiving missteps. But this was different. The man's repeated disregard for collaboration, respect, and basic professionalism had pushed her beyond anything she had previously experienced. It was personal, it was justified, and it would not be forgotten. By the end of this chapter, it was evident Carol Burnett had confronted the one person who had challenged her limits, and she had emerged stronger, more resolute, and fully in control. She had not allowed her grace to be exploited, and she had demonstrated that even a woman known for laughter and warmth could wield authority when necessary. The stage was set for the final resolution, a moment that would permanently cement this man's place in history as the only person Carol Burnett ever truly hated. After the dramatic confrontation, Carol Burnett finally regained control over her legendary show. The tension that had once threatened the harmony of the Carol Burnett show was now fully resolved, though not without leaving a mark on everyone involved. While the man in question remained a presence in Hollywood, Carol's handling of the situation became a lesson in strength, professionalism, and unwavering self-respect. Insiders say that following the confrontation, Carol set new boundaries for her set. She demanded respect, clearly communicated expectations, and created an environment where collaboration, not conflict, thrived. Her cast and crew immediately felt the change. Rehearsals regained their energy, sketches flowed more smoothly, and the laughter that audiences adored returned with renewed vigor. Carol's brilliance on screen was now matched by an unmistakable authority off camera, and the entire team rallied behind her leadership. For Carol herself, the experience was transformative. She reflected on the rare instance when her patience had been tested to its absolute limit. Known for her warmth and humor, she realized that even kindness has boundaries and that standing up for herself and her team was essential. Friends and colleagues noticed a shift in her demeanor. She became even more intentional, decisive, and confident in her choices. Carol had proven that grace and strength could coexist, and that even someone as beloved as she was capable of holding firm when necessary. The man who had caused so much friction eventually moved on from the show, but his presence remained a cautionary tale. Stories about the tension spread quietly through Hollywood circles, cementing the legend of Carol Burnett's resolve. She had faced one of the few individuals in her entire career who truly tested her patience and had come out stronger, not weakened. For audiences, the behind-the-scenes drama remained largely invisible, hidden beneath layers of laughter, sketches, and flawless performances. Yet, for those who worked alongside Carol, the story was unforgettable. They witnessed a rare combination of generosity, creativity, and uncompromising authority, a combination that made Carol Burnett not just a comedic genius, but also a formidable leader in an industry often dominated by egos. Ultimately, this experience became a defining moment in her career. Carol Burnett, the woman who brought joy to millions, had also proven that she would not allow disrespect, arrogance, or disruption to undermine her vision. The man who challenged her became a footnote in history, a reminder of the limits of patience and the power of standing one's ground. As the curtain fell on this chapter, it was clear Carol Burnett's legacy remains untouchable, not just because of her laughter, but because of the strength and wisdom she displayed when faced with adversity. And for everyone who worked with her, one thing is certain: the one person she truly hated will never be forgotten. It wasn't just a disagreement. It wasn't a personality clash. It was the breaking point of a woman everyone believed couldn't be pushed this far. This is the untold story of the only man Carol Burnett ever admitted she couldn't stand, the one person who turned her kindness into fury, and the moment she made sure he would never set foot on her stage again.